Hey YouTube, Matthew here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's art-related video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can construct rectangular prisms adhering to not only one-point perspective, but two-point perspective. And I want to briefly go over why being able to draw rectangular prisms from your imagination is very relevant to constructing the human form. So in later videos down the road, when I get into anatomy, you'll be able to really understand how to manipulate these prisms in 3D space so that you can build a figure from your imagination in any position. So this all comes together. But we're going to keep it very basic, very simple today in today's kind of tutorial style video. So take your ruler and halfway through the page, just like we did in the last video, mark off your horizon line. Doesn't have to be perfect, just marking off a line we can use as a guide for our horizon line. So we're going to label that HL. And let's start with simple one-point perspective. Now I'm going to use a ruler to construct the first prism, just so you can see how perfect it can look when you use accurate drawing tools. But for the rest of them, I'm going to freehand draw them because it's just going to save a lot of time. I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time. I want to just get through this lesson with you so you can really grasp the concept of 1- and 2-point perspective with these prisms. So 1 point, vanishing point right here, call that VP1. All right, so let's start with the face of your rectangle. It can be a square face, it could be a rectangular face. It doesn't matter because we're going to turn it into a prism. And you can draw this, I'd say draw it perpendicular to your horizon line, just to keep things very basic and simple for now. So perpendicular is exactly 90 degrees to the, let's say this is 90, you're going to draw it 90 up and down. Make sure this line is parallel to, let's draw a rectangular faced, rectangular prism. And then these two lines should be parallel. Okay. Now from each vertex, as I've mentioned in prior videos, you're going to bring each of these points back to the vanishing point. So again, this is very basic 1-point perspective, constructing a prism constructing a prism that has dimensionality. And again, of course, drawing is creating the illusion of three-dimensionality on a 2D surface. The drawing paper is the 2D surface. And now here I've arbitrarily determined where I want to create these next two vertices and how long I want the rectangular prism to be. And of course, because I drew it so close to the horizon line and the vanishing point especially, it's going to look a little bit awkward. I mean, these edges are converging very strongly towards that vanishing point. And then you're going to take this vertex and bring it straight down again, parallel to the initial ones we drew, or exactly perpendicular to the horizon line. And then this one too. This one's a little bit, it's very narrow here because it's so close to the line from this vertex to the vanishing point. And then just connect those two new vertices. We're constantly creating vertices when the lines intersect with each other. Everywhere they touch creates a new vertex. Okay, so we've got a prism now, rectangular faced rectangular prism. You could do a square faced rectangular prism too, and that works just as fine. I'll draw one of those just so you can see. So we'll do it, let's do it down here, aiming for square, and then just carrying it back to carrying these guidelines. And then, you know, if I was to make a cube, I'd probably cut it off right here. Actually, maybe even a little bit further, closer rather. But let's make a rectangular prism, so take it back a bit. So you can decide how far back you want to go, how long you want the rectangular prism to be. You're in control at this point. it's up to you to use your discretion as an artist to decide exactly the shape. And the vanishing point is your guide to, again, creating that dimensionality with it. So let's take it a bit further. Now we're going to go into 2-point perspective. And actually, before I get there, I want to mention again that if you draw your prism beneath the horizon line, you're going to see the top face of the prism. And if you draw your prism, let's do one here quickly just so you can see. So if we draw a rectangle up here and build a prism from up here, you can see that you're going to see the bottom face because it's above the horizon line. It's as if you were looking up. And again, the horizon line is your eye level. Let's mark that off here. I'll just put eye level. So that means wherever you're looking, no matter your elevation, wherever you look, you're going to see where the sky, this is technically the sky up here, where the sky meets land. Land is down here. So whether you're standing on a cliff or you're on the top of a skyscraper, you will see, your eye level is going to be obviously elevated because you're elevated, but you're going to see where the land and sky connect, and that is the horizon line. The rules of perspective adhere to any position you are on the face of the earth. Okay. And actually, technically, anywhere you are, anywhere, even if you're underwater, I mean, rock structures, everything is going to adhere to your line of sight. Everything's going to vanish to the point where your eyes are looking at your line of sight. Okay, so let's mark off 2 vanishing points here. Now, here's the thing. When you draw 2-point perspective and your drawing is close to the vanishing points, or the vanishing points are close together, it's going to create a very kind of awkward look. Almost, so you saw how these edges converge back drastically? It's going to do that to your drawing. If you have 2 vanishing points, like if I put one here and one here, and I drew in between, the edges are going to converge so extreme towards these vanishing points. So I do recommend, I recommend trying it. Maybe I'll do one just to show you. Let's do, I'll do a vanishing point here. Let's call that VP2, VP3. And then we can, so 2-point, we're going to have 2 points of perspective, 2 vanishing points now. This is 2-point perspective. So now instead of drawing the entire face and connecting each of those vertexes to the single vanishing point, you're going to start with a straight line. Again, perpendicular to, it doesn't have to be perpendicular. I will rotate it in the next drawing, but I want to show you how it looks before we do that. And again, you're going to connect each of these vertices to both vanishing points. And again, I'm freehanding this strictly to save time, but I do recommend if you're a beginner, if you're coming to this channel new, it's a great jumping on point. Once again, I'm keeping these initial videos very basic to instruct you on some of the, not only the like warm-up techniques, basic techniques, choosing the right pencil types, but also just some of these essential aspects of drawing, creating accurate looking drawings. Perspective is critical in formulating any drawing. When you start drawing a composition, the first thing I start with is my horizon line, and then everything's going to be built off that line of sight. Whether it's an organic scene like a forest or an architectural scene in an urban setting, the horizon line is critical. All right, so back on track here. We've got 2 vertices from the straight line, and we've connected both vanishing points to each of them. And now you're going to decide how long do I want the face, how short, and then the body of the prism. Let's mark it off here. So now, again, we've got 2 new vertices. Whenever these lines intersect, each intersection point is going to be a new, you're going to bring those back to the vanishing points, both vanishing points. And you can see now we have constructed a prism with using 2-point perspective. And you can see now it kind of warps the faces. It's a rhomboid shape because it's being pulled towards this vanishing point and this one. This is now the shape is becoming more accurate with perspective, but you can see they converge quite heavily, quite drastically. And I mean, this object would have to be very large for you to be standing on the ground to see this kind of convergence of the edges here like this. And this would be, of course, the bottom face. I'll just shade that in so you can see that if the sun was above it, this bottom face would be shadowed. I'll just darken this a little bit here so you can see that. Now this wouldn't be shadowed if the sun was above, of course, but I'm just marking this off so you can see that the top face is visible when it's on the bottom, when it's below the horizon line. And when it's above, the bottom face is visible. So 2-point again. Let's bring the vanishing points back even further. Let's mark that off. VP4, VP5. Okay. And let's draw one below the horizon line just for fun. So again, mark off where you situate it where you'd like it to be. Maybe we could put it down here. Again, keeping it perpendicular. I'll draw some rotated prisms after this just to show you what those look like. Now again, this is very basic instruction on this type of perspective. The more complex your scene becomes, like if you're drawing a neighborhood of houses, for instance, all those blocks the houses are structured from, all the details, everything's going to converge back to the vanishing points, and it's going to become complicated looking, but it's going to be very beautiful when you adhere to the vanishing points you've set up and everything's drawn accurately, because with perspective, your drawing can be right or wrong. If a single line is off by a degree, a single degree, if you haven't drawn it accurately to the vanishing point, you're going to be able to notice that. That's why I emphasize using a ruler. I mean, I use rulers when I clean up drawings, when I ink them, but when I'm sketching out the initial drawing, I do it quickly by freehand it, and I use my pencil just because it's that much faster. It's all about speed, really getting my ideas down, because a lot of creativity comes while I'm building a drawing, building a composition, so I just want to blast it down. That's something that comes with time. It's good initially to practice, good practice using the right drawing instruments. So again, we can decide maybe it's going to be a kind of a longer, again, so okay, 2 vertices made, and let's draw through this one right here. And then again, bring this back, bring this back. And I've also pointed out in prior videos, you always want to draw through, even if you're overlapping other objects in a scene, whatever you're trying to draw through everything. Because when you clean up, which I do recommend you do, either with a darker gradient or ink, you'll be able to make those decisions a lot easier. And your drawing, again, it's going to be a lot more interesting to look at, because you're going to have all these layers of like objects in front of each other. And it makes for a really clever looking piece of art when it's heavily layered. It makes someone who looks at it think, how did they do that? How did they build it all? And it's because you drew through everything, and then you carefully defined the final lines. You had a guide essentially with your construction lines. All these construction lines are guidelines, and then make that so perpendicular, all of them. Again, so what I'm saying, if it was off, like if I drew this a little bit like this, I mean, it's very noticeable that it's off, obviously. But even a single degree off, even if it's slightly off, you're gonna notice that. Especially if you have a trained artist's eye, you're gonna really notice that being off. Okay, so, and then again, bring this down here. These technically should line up nicely. And there we go. So now we've got a prism below the horizon line, and just like I marked up here, you'd see the top. It wouldn't be shadowed, obviously, unless well, it really wouldn't be shadowed that heavily, but I'm just marking off where the top face is here. So you can see that above, you're going to see the bottom face, and below the horizon line, you're going to see the top face. Okay. So now there's something else I want to demonstrate here. If you're going to do 2-point perspective and you draw your mark, like we call this the marker, this marking line here, determining where we're going to set up our prism. There might be a better technical term for that, but this initial line is everything when you're starting your 2-point perspective prism. Let's put it right here. So now it's intersecting with the horizon line. So let's connect each of our vertices. Okay. And then let's say I'm trying to draw something like a house. So I'm going to mark off one side of the house here. Maybe it's a little bit longer on this end. Okay. So now we're only going to see 2 faces here because we can't see the top, we can't see the bottom because it's situated right, it's across the horizon line. We're looking at eye level. This is eye level right here. So we're neither seeing the bottom of it nor the top. This is a lot more accurate too. When you're at a fair distance away from a house, you'd see it just like this. And then, as I've always mentioned, marking off the center of these faces is going to help you determine how to build something, how to rather situate something like a roof. So here we have the center line here. You can extend this out and then mark off how tall you want the roof to be and just connect these vertices together. And now you have accurate placement of the roof. And from this vertex, bring this back to this vanishing point. And then keep that parallel over here on this side. And now you've got, it almost looks kind of like a barn. And you could add the door here, the barn door. And again, you always want to keep your lines parallel to each other. And even if you include like a window here, again, keep the lines parallel. So this line would adhere to this vanishing point. And then parallel, okay. And we could, mark off the roof here. I just wanted to show you how you can easily build a structure like a house. And you can get so much more creative with this because, maybe there's like a garage attached. So you could, again, I drew a line here. I'm going to mark off a new vertex. And then carry it over and out. And then, mark off where you'd want it to, how big you want it to be. Determining size is the power you have as an artist. You get to decide how large something's going to be, how small, and it's all to your discretion. That's the magic of drawing. The more knowledgeable and skilled you become, the more control and power you have over how your piece will turn out. And it's really satisfying to have a piece work out, especially when you've applied all of the knowledge that you have. And I mean, there's no greater joy than working on a piece with characters and everything works in perspective and, the characters are in dynamic positions. I'm going to get into character building and anatomy in later videos, but for now, I feel like perspective is a very essential starting point. More so even than lighting and shading, shadows and light, and even human anatomy. You have to know how to rotate objects in space, prisms in space, because like I've mentioned in my prior videos, everything is constructed out of geometric shapes and prisms rather. Okay, so here's the garage, and again, we can mark off, maybe the roof is connected in such a way like this, the extension of the house, something like that. I mean, you can just keep building shapes, and again, using your vanishing points as guides to construct the angles accurately. And I mean, the sky's the limit with how far you can push your architectural design. And this is, architects use this when they're creating their models of their structures they want to build. 2-point is critical in allowing us to see this two-sided angle of whatever structure. Because if you're drawing straight on, you're not gonna, you might have a single vanishing point, and then you're building around it, so the angles of like the window edges, the frame might converge to that point. I will demonstrate that in another video on a fresh sheet, because it's getting crowded here. But yes, you can see what you can see when you have multiple vanishing points or a single vanishing point, and where you have it situated closer to the, if it's right. So actually, I wanted to point out this one is almost right in front of the vanishing point, so you're barely seeing, actually, in fact, you're not even seeing this side. You're not seeing this side. You're only seeing two faces, because I was past the vanishing point here. This one is slightly to the right of the vanishing point, so you're going to see this face here. And if it's to the left, you're going to see three. So you've got three faces, 1, 2, 3. If it's right below your vanishing point, you're only going to see two faces. Okay, now there is one more thing I wanted to show you with drawing 2-point perspective prisms, but technically this is not in accordance with perspective. So if you draw, let's say you draw a prism like, let's say you draw a rectangular prism, or even just a cube. Let's say the face looks like this. Or we could draw a rectangular prism here, since I've gone that far. Again, parallel. Now, if these lines are perfectly parallel like this, they're not converging to a vanishing point, then what you've drawn is what's called an isometric drawing. And for this to be completely accurate as an isometric drawing, this is something that I practiced in mechanical drafting class in high school. I remember we used a plethora of drawing instruments to do this. An angular arm that we could adjust to create these edges at proper angles. All these edges are at 30 degrees from the horizon line. That's 30 degrees here. I mean, it's not perfectly 30. I've just eyeballed it, and all of these angles, these are all 30 degrees. So this is, it looks interesting. It looks like a rectangular prism, but it is not an accurate depiction of a rectangular prism, because everything is perfectly drawn at these 30-degree angles, every edge. So this is called an isometric drawing, and it is outside of the rules of perspective. Isometric depiction. And here we've got 2-point perspective. I'll just mark that off. 2-point perspective. And down here we've got 1-point perspective. Now, one last thing I want to touch on, since we're drawing rectangular prisms, is when you start to draw the figure, let's say you've got, I'll do a quick demonstration here. You've got a line of action, so the body's in some kind of a pose, and you're marking off the torso. The torso, the rib cage fits relatively nicely within a box. When I was training to understand anatomy, manipulating the prism in space, imagining that the rib cage, because the rib cage is a complex piece of anatomy, the skeletal structure, and it's much easier to use boxes as guides initially when you're learning placement, when you're learning how to fit the shape of the rib cage along the not only the line of action, but the positioning of the human form. I mean, we might see the bottom depending on the angle that the person's body is tilted at, or and then you have the pelvis down here, and it would kind of follow through. Just to show you that, and if someone's really bent over, you might have quite a curve in the angle of this. See, we're looking at it from the side view, and then the center line would be, like right down here, so that this person's torso is bent, their spine is curving. Okay, just to give you an idea of like how important being able to manipulate these objects in, you know, practice drawing rectangular prisms without the horizon line. It's tricky, but you can do it. And again, I've done this without the vanishing points or the horizon line. It's not completely perfect, but it doesn't look too far off, because I'm being mindful of these angles converging, these edges rather, converging on slight angles towards a vanishing point that is off page here. And these ones as well. These ones are converging up here. And these ones would be converging. So this is more like actually a 3-point perspective prism. And I will get into 3-point in another video, but for now I wanted to demonstrate 2-point. And yeah, let's just draw some more. Again, if you draw it more like a rhomboid shape, so you can have these lines are not going to be perpendicular, and then you can construct. See, these lines are converging down this way, so I'm going to have this one at a slight angle this way, and these ones are converging down this way, so I'm going to have this one. So that doesn't look too bad, and I did this freehand. And again, you can. So once you remember that, let's see if that lines up. Not bad. And we're looking at it from this imaginary horizon line I drew this off of would be underneath here. That's how I envisioned it. So this would be the bottom face. So you got, okay. Let's draw another one here. Practice some 1-point here, line it up here. Maybe take it off there. It's cool when you draw a scene with 1-point perspective, everything converges to a single vanishing point, and it creates quite a powerful effect. I mean, if you enter a room and the door is perfectly centered to that room, as soon as you walk in and you look straight ahead, everything's going to converge to a singular point. I'm going to do a demonstration to show you what that would look like. And then if you're outside walking around a neighborhood, like I was saying, or you're at a city block, like waiting on a street corner, and you look across the diagonal to the opposite corner, every building you see is going to be in 2-point perspective, because now you're looking at one of these edges, and all the other the edges are angling off towards vanishing points at the furthest ends of your line of vision, your horizon line. Okay, let's do a couple more here. Let's do another 2-point perspective. I was going to do it on an angle. So yeah, I mean, just instead of your line being perpendicular now to the horizon line, tilt it on an angle and see what that looks like. It's just going to create kind of a cool effect at that tilt. I don't want to get it too cluttered here, but now you can see again, this would look much, we could say accurate. I mean, it's accurate here because we're adhering to perspective with 2 points, but with 3 points, so parallel, parallel, and then just, carry these back and parallel. I'm going to bring out the ruler for this just to make sure it's, let's see, just cut it off here. And then I do that one there. This is going to line up here. Okay, and then this comes right back to there. Okay, so you can see now it's kind of looking strange. It's looking strange because it's on a tilt. It's adhering to 2-point. It's close to the vanishing points, relatively close. You'd want to use 3-point perspective when you start tilting angles like that. It's going to really create a more accurate depiction. But also, it's not common that we see prisms on such a tilt like this. So this would be something better if it was maybe like part of a roof or some awkward kind of structure that's been built. The perspective would, the angles would change, obviously, because the structure is not, it hasn't been built straight up and down on the axis. Okay, I'm gonna erase this one and I'm gonna keep that one. Let's do one last one here. Keep it nice and simple, maybe even stack up. As long as you remember that the vertices are created when you intersect, and use those as your points to guide you with your lines as they converge back to the vanishing points. You can't go wrong. And you'll end up with a nice looking prism every time. Let's see. It's getting chaotic here. Okay. So again, you can attach, I mean, this looks almost like a truck. You know, if we added the wheels down here, you could see that it's almost like a vehicle that we've drawn in perspective here. And again, like I had mentioned earlier, you can start stacking blocks up on top of each other. You can start joining them together. You can get creative with the shapes. You can start putting cylinders in and triangular based prisms and triangular pyramids. Just stack them up, build, and you've got something really interesting to look at. And it's going to be accurate because you followed the rules of perspective. You really can't defy perspective without turning the piece into some kind of abstract piece of art, which is interesting in its own, and it's got its place. But for now, we're going to learn the basics, and we're going to do it with some accuracy and some technique. And again, do mind my freehand drawing. I did this strictly to save time. But like I said, it's my preference, my personal preference, to do my construction work in pencil with my hands. My mind is moving fast and I want to get my my drawing down. So when you clean up, always use a ruler, always. Even if you're cleaning up in graphite, you can't go wrong with a ruler. It's going to give you those crisp, sharp lines that will make your drawing look very clean, very professional, and that's what we're aiming for. All right, friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you got something out of it, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your feedback. If I've missed anything, I'd love to hear your opinions, your take. I appreciate feedback of any kind. Leave a like. If you're interested in these kinds of videos, consider subscribing, because I am going to put out videos regularly. I've been putting out videos regularly, so take a look at my slowly building archive I've got in my on my page, my channel. and you'll be able to find more content related to drawing. And it's gonna get more complex as I continue on. I'm just starting at the very basic level with drawing to, bring on any new artists on their journey, bring them on board and have them kind of evolve with the videos as they evolve. That's kind of my objective with my content. I'm very tempted to start drawing just anything I want, but I kind of want to show you guys how everything is built before I just start blasting down some of my my imaginative pieces. I've got a lot of ideas. I'm always drawing from my imagination. In the next video, I will do that one point looking inside a room just to show you what it can look like. And then I'm going to show you an advanced version of a 1-point perspective drawing that I've already completed. So stay tuned for that. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day or night, wherever you happen to be. And I will catch you next time. Take care.